A doctor secretly cancelled her appointment and went to the countryside cottage to check on her husband. When she realised what was happening there, she was stunned. Celine carefully hung up her uniform in the staff locker, smoothing out the creases with her hands. The small, fluorescent-lit room was quiet now, the chatter of her co-workers having faded as they trickled out one by one. She grabbed her scarf and bag, taking a moment to glance in the mirror. Her tired eyes stared back at her, but she managed a faint smile before turning away. The cool night air hit her as she stepped outside, and she paused for a moment, pulling her scarf tighter around her neck. The streetlights painted a soft amber glow on the pavement, and the faint hum of the city filled the air. Somewhere in the distance a dog barked, its sound echoing faintly. Celine walked to her car, her footsteps crunching on the gravel parking lot. Sliding into the driver's seat, she placed her bag on the passenger side and exhaled slowly. The engine hummed to life, and she flicked on the wipers to clear the light drizzle that had begun to fall. For a moment she sat there, her hands resting on the wheel, the rhythmic swish of the wipers the only sound. She glanced at her phone but set it aside, leaning back in her seat. She didn't feel like going home at all. Lately, the end of the workday didn't bring Celine the joy it once had. She was a forensic pathologist specialising in criminal cases. After dealing with such matters, the comfort of home was a necessity for anyone. However, her relationship with her husband had sharply deteriorated, turning home life into a continuous nightmare. Her husband, Callum, worked as a forensic expert in the same department as Celine. While they didn't constantly argue, something intangible had changed. At first, Celine didn't notice, as her demanding job often kept her thoughts far from reality. But eventually the problem became impossible to ignore. Callum had started taking extra shifts and staying late at work, even though Selene knew there was no need for it. Persistent rumours were circulating around the department, and then there were the unmistakable signs. The scent of women's perfume on him, stray hairs on his clothes, and whispered phone calls behind the closed bathroom door, muffled by the sound of running water. Celine's profession had shaped her character significantly. She was a strong-willed woman with nerves of steel. Not much could unsettle or frighten her. Even her husband's infidelity didn't provoke an outburst. She decided that creating a scandal was beneath her dignity. Instead, she planned to catch him red-handed at the right moment and seek her revenge later. The car had warmed up, and Selina flicked her cigarette out the window before slowly driving off. There was no reason to hurry. When she entered the empty apartment, Celine turned on the lights and scanned the walls, which were covered with various photographs. One photo showed her and Callum standing on a southern promenade, embracing. It was from their honeymoon. Celine stared at the picture, recalling how deeply in love they had been back then. It had seemed impossible for such intense love to fade. They couldn't go a day without each other, and every minute spent together had been unforgettable. The man in the photograph was now part of the past. Although their appearances hadn't changed much, their feelings for one another had. Celine took off her coat and walked into the living room, tossing her bag onto a chair. Callum was on duty tonight. Of that, she was sure. Even if he wasn't, she didn't feel like checking his fidelity today. It had been a tough day at work. Celine had conducted an autopsy on a young murder victim whose family couldn't be located. Even her strong nerves sometimes faltered. Not every case could be approached with detachment. Pouring herself a glass of wine, Selina stepped out onto the balcony. The night sky was clear, the vivid orange circle of the moon glowing brightly against the darkness. For reasons she couldn't quite understand, Celine felt an overwhelming urge to call her husband. The old photographs she'd gone through earlier had done their job, stirring memories she thought she'd buried. Maybe, just maybe, this call could bridge the growing distance between them, if only for a moment. "Hello," Callum answered almost immediately. "Hi, how's work?" Selina asked, her wineglass balanced in one hand. "Same as usual. Why are you calling?" His tone was casual but laced with surprise. It had been a long time since Celine had called him just to talk. I just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. I am your wife, after all. I'm fine. And you? Callum's response was cautious, almost puzzled. I'm fine too, just sitting here looking at the moon and thinking about the past. Got it, Callum replied curtly. A burst of voices sounded faintly in the background. Celine instinctively pulled the phone away from her ear, her brow furrowing. She brought it back and asked, "Who's making all that noise?" "Someone's calling for me. I need to finish a fingerprint analysis report." "Good night," Callum said abruptly, ending the call before she could reply. Celine stared at the phone, her disappointment sharp and bitter. This wasn't the conversation she'd hoped for. "It's time to end this," she thought, tipping her glass back and draining the wine in one gulp. The opportunity to act came the very next morning. As Celine prepared for work, Callum returned home from his night shift. "Didn't expect you back so early," she said, keeping her tone cold, masking her irritation. "Had a lot to get through," Callum replied, his voice weary. "I'll sleep a bit, and then head to the cottage. Need to swap out the winter tyres for summer ones." "Why today?" Celine asked, her displeasure unmistakable. "Maybe we could go together in a couple of days when our schedules align." "No need to wait. I'll take care of it, chop some firewood while I'm there, and then we can go together later. You're working tonight anyway. What am I supposed to do at home alone?" "Do as you wish," Celine said, suppressing the urge to argue. She forced herself to stay composed. This was the perfect opportunity to uncover the truth. "Great, then. Let me know when you're leaving," she added, her smile thin and deliberate. "I will," Callum promised with a yawn, disappearing into the bedroom. When Celine got to work, the first thing she did was call her colleague, Evander. She'd helped him out countless times before and hoped he'd return the favour. "Hey, Evander, I've got a life-or-death question for you." "I already have a bad feeling about this," Evander replied, his tone wary. "Don't worry, it's not that bad. Could you switch shifts with me tonight? I really need to leave." "I knew your call wouldn't mean anything good," Evander sighed heavily. "But fine, I'll do it. Where else am I going to go?" "Thank you. You're the best." "More like the biggest fool. Trading a beer night for a night with corpses. But hey, at least my karma's improving," he joked. "All right, I'll head in. See you in a couple of hours." "Thanks, Evander. You're a lifesaver," Celine said, her gratitude sincere. About 3 hours later, Selena's phone buzzed with a message from Callum. "Heading to the cottage. No traffic, I'll get there quickly. Have a good shift." Celine felt a grim satisfaction. If her suspicions were correct, Callum wasn't going to the cottage alone. He was heading there with his mistress. In a few hours, the truth would finally come to light, and she would no longer be shackled by doubt. True to his word, Evander arrived to cover her shift. Celine quickly changed out of her work clothes and slipped away, her resolve growing stronger with every step. Callum should already be at the cottage by now, but she wasn't in a rush. Timing was everything. During the drive, Celine reflected on her failing marriage. The last few years played in her mind like a sad, distorted reel. When was the last time Callum had told her he loved her, or kissed her, or even looked at her with affection? His distance had become a canyon she couldn't cross, leaving her to navigate their marriage alone. As she neared the countryside, Selena's thoughts sharpened. She couldn't believe it had come to this, sneaking to her own cottage to catch her husband in the act. The humiliation burned, but anger quickly doused the flames. She deserved answers. Celine parked her car on a neighbouring street to avoid being noticed. The cool night air greeted her as she stepped out, her steps purposeful as she made her way to the property. The truth was just ahead, waiting to be uncovered. The yard appeared empty. Celine carefully opened the gate, grateful she'd insisted Callum oil the hinges. It didn't make a sound. Moving silently, she crept toward the house and crouched behind the bushes beneath a window. The window was wide open and voices floated out into the still night air. "This place is so cozy." "You never invited me here before," said a woman's voice, one that made Selena's stomach twist painfully. There was no doubt now. Inside with her husband was Ilara, the secretary from the legal department. Celine had disliked her from the moment they met. Ilara's constant frowning and overpowering perfume had grated on her nerves. How did I not realize sooner? That perfume I smelled on him. It was hers, Selina thought bitterly. It wasn't easy to get away, Callum was saying. In winter it's too cold here, and in spring and summer, Celine's always tagging along with me. Aren't you afraid someone will see you bringing another woman here? Ilara asked. Her tone was laced with a mixture of curiosity and malice, as if she secretly hoped Celine would find out and leave Callum. We'll be careful. No one will see us, Callum reassured her, his voice calm and confident. I want to come here whenever I want, without having to hide, Ilara pressed, looking directly at him. You know that's impossible, Callum replied flatly. Why? Leave Celine. You don't even have kids together. What's holding you back? Ilara pouted, her voice dripping with impatience. I will. I promised you, didn't I? I just need more time. You've been saying that forever, but that time never seems to come, Ilara shot back, her frustration evident. Sweetheart, it's not that simple, Callum said, his tone turning soft, as though trying to placate her. I promise, soon we'll be together, and we won't have to hide anymore. This is your last chance, Ilara warned, her voice firm. At least your wife is on shift tonight. Otherwise, we'd still be sneaking around like school kids. Well then, let's toast to night shifts, Callum quipped, and the clink of glasses reached Celine's ears. Now we can come here often. She'll never catch us, Ilara said smugly. We'll see, Callum replied cautiously. Like I said, it wasn't easy to get away this time. You don't have to tell her you're coming to the cottage, Ilara purred, her tone shifting to one of faux sweetness. She works long shifts. She won't even notice you're gone. Yeah, that job of hers, what a joy, Callum sneered. Honestly, it disgusts me to even be near her anymore. She spends her days poking around dead bodies and then talks about it like it's normal. I can't stand it. Why did she have to leave forensics? She should have just stayed there. Everything would have been fine. Celine stayed hidden, her anger simmering dangerously. Callum didn't even try to conceal his irritation, while Ilara was visibly annoyed. Don't say things like that to me. It's disgusting. Poking around in dead bodies. Ugh! Ilara snapped, her voice dripping with disdain. And really, why are we talking about your dear wife again? It's irritating. You're right. Let's not dwell on sad things. Callum reached for Ilara's hand and brought it to his lips with a smirk. Sad things. Am I just a sad thing to him now? Celine thought bitterly, crouched outside and trembling with a mix of fury and pain. Her mind drifted to the past. She remembered Callum persuading her to switch to forensic pathology, touting the better pay and career prospects as a solution to their financial struggles. Now here she was, spending her days with corpses to pay off the mortgage faster, while he entertained another woman in their cottage. Celine clenched her fists, her body taut with the urge to storm into the house and destroy everything in her path. But she stopped herself, taking a deep breath to steady her fraying composure. She slowly retreated from her hiding spot, slipping away from the property unnoticed. When she reached her car, Celine collapsed into the driver's seat, burying her face in the steering wheel as hot tears streamed down her cheeks. I won't let this go. They don't know who they're messing with. I'll make them regret this. She'll wish she'd never been born, Celine vowed, a cold and calculating plan for revenge already taking shape in her mind. By the time she got home, Celine had forced herself to mask her emotions. She couldn't afford to tip her hand just yet. Callum was already back and clearly didn't expect her to return from her shift so early. You're home already? He asked, startled. They let me leave early, Celine replied evenly, her voice betraying none of the storm within. Why are you back so soon? I thought you'd spend the whole day there. I finished everything. Why stay longer? Callum said casually, though he kept his distance. Right, Celine murmured, her voice heavy with unspoken accusations. It was unbearable to look at the man she now saw as a traitor. You don't look so great. Are you okay? Callum asked, noting her red eyes and wearied expression. Just a tough shift. It's hard work, Celine replied, bitterness curling through her words as she recalled the hateful conversation she'd overheard. Go get some rest. I'm going to shower, Callum said before walking to the bathroom, clearly eager to wash away the lingering scent of Ilara's perfume. Selena's eyes followed him, narrowing in disdain. I don't look good, huh? Well, I can't compete with your darling Ilara, can I? She thought, blinking back fresh tears. Her gaze shifted to Callum's phone, carelessly left on the nightstand. Her breath caught. How careless of him. He must have been in such a hurry to scrub away the evidence that he forgot about it. Celine picked up the phone and tried to unlock it. Callum used only 3 passwords for everything, and she knew all of them. On the second attempt, she succeeded. Confident in his secrecy, Callum had never imagined his wife would go through his phone. Celine quickly skimmed through his messages, though she didn't really need additional proof to fuel her plans. Her thoughts turned to her best friend, Aislinn, an investigator who was well versed in such matters. Celine immediately called her and arranged to meet. Thank you for making time for me, Celine said when they met. No problem. What's going on? Aislinn asked, concerned. She was small and fragile in appearance, but brave enough to face the harshest crime scenes. Callum has a mistress. Yesterday he took her to our cottage. I followed them. If I'm being honest, I'm not surprised, Aislinn said with a guilty look. You knew? Celine asked, shocked. Of course not. If I had, I would have told you immediately. But there were rumours. I just hoped they weren't true. Well, they are. So everyone knew but me? I'm the naive fool who trusted her husband, Celine said bitterly. You're not a fool. He's the idiot. How could he treat you like this? Aislinn replied angrily. What are you planning to do? Divorce him. But not yet. First, I want revenge, and I need your help. How can I get full access to his phone? Full access? Aislinn asked, thinking it over. There's an app you can use, but you'll need to install it on his phone and grant access to yours. It's not free, though. No problem. What app is it? I'll send you the link. But Celine, Aislinn said hesitantly, you're scaring me. Please tell me you're not planning to do anything illegal. Of course not. I'm not about to ruin my life over this, Celine replied, though she couldn't meet Aislinn's eyes. Good. Just be careful. Thanks, Aislinn. You're a lifesaver, Celine said, relieved. You're welcome. By the way, I've decided to get a divorce too, Aislinn admitted suddenly. What? Really? Why? We're just too different. We don't even have anything to talk about anymore, Aislinn confided. Maybe it's something that can be fixed, Celine suggested. Fixed? Other than cheating? No, I mean... Aislinn hesitated. You cheated? Celine exclaimed. No, but I wanted to, Aislinn admitted, avoiding Celine's gaze. With who? Celine asked, curious. Evander? Evander, my colleague. Celine was completely taken aback. She had expected anything but that. She knew what kind of men her friend liked, and Evander certainly didn't fit the mould. I didn't expect this from myself either, but I feel an inexplicable pull toward him, Aislinn admitted, visibly embarrassed. You surprise me. I don't even know whether to be happy for you or not. Considering that I'm still married, probably not. Let me get divorced first, and then we'll see, Aislinn said with a shy smile. What about Evander? Does he feel the same way? Yes, but he's very gentlemanly. We haven't crossed any lines yet. It's all very innocent. Like a courtship, Aislinn confessed, her cheeks flushing. Well, I always thought he was a good guy, Celine said, a hint of triumph in her voice. He really is, Aislinn agreed, her eyes sparkling. The two friends continued walking through the park, discussing work which occupied most of their lives. By the time Selina returned home, she was restless. She couldn't wait to install the tracking app and exact her revenge. Celine worried that Callum might no longer leave his phone unattended, which would make her plan impossible. She had no backup strategy, so everything hinged on this one chance. That evening, Callum returned home later than usual. He looked tired but oddly pleased. Celine didn't bother asking what had made him so happy. If he didn't volunteer the information, it was probably something to do with his dear Ilara. "The Wexleys invited us to their wedding anniversary," Callum said, pulling off his sweater and tossing it into the laundry. "When?" Celine asked, glancing at him. "Next weekend. Are you coming?" "I'll go. If I didn't, would you go alone?" Celine asked, curious if he'd dare bring his mistress to a mutual friend's event. "No, of course not. I was just checking. You've been acting strange lately. Maybe you'd prefer to stay home and rest," Callum replied, caught off guard by her reaction. "I don't want to stay home," Celine said sharply. "All right then, I'll let them know we're coming." Celine watched Callum closely as he settled into the armchair, flipping through TV channels. His phone lay next to him. "How's work?" Callum asked, not taking his eyes off the screen. "Same as always," Celine replied, trying to sound casual. "I'm really glad you convinced me to switch specialties. I actually enjoy it now." "Glad to hear it," Callum said, slightly surprised. He hadn't noticed her enthusiasm for her job before. "Maybe you should leave forensics too," Celine suggested, savouring the absurdity of the conversation. "No, I'm too attached to it." "Of course you are," Celine thought bitterly, clenching her jaw. "You're disgusted by me now, so why would you ever want to deal with corpses yourself? Secretaries have such cushy jobs compared to mine." "Why are you suggesting that?" Callum asked, puzzled. "Why not? 2 high salaries are better than 1, she replied nonchalantly. "It's not for me." "Sorry," Callum said, getting up. "I'm going to the kitchen to grab something to eat." As he walked away, his phone remained on the armchair. Celine couldn't believe how careless he was for someone with a mistress. Quickly but carefully, Celine installed the tracking app on his phone, granting it the necessary permissions. She worked swiftly, fearing he might return before she finished. Once done, she checked to ensure everything was set up correctly. Aislinn hadn't lied. The app worked perfectly. All of Callum's messages, including those with Ilara, were now visible to Celine. "Well, now you're in for it," Celine thought, closing her eyes and savouring the anticipation of her long-awaited revenge. As the weekend approached, Celine grew more anxious. The thought of attending a gathering filled with colleagues from their clinic, all of whom likely knew about Callum's affair, filled her with dread. She considered backing out but ultimately decided against it. She wasn't going to give her husband and his mistress the satisfaction. For the Wexleys' anniversary, Celine prepared meticulously. She wore her favourite figure-hugging dress, styled her hair in an elegant updo, and applied bold makeup. She knew Callum adored this look on her and wanted to remind him of what he was losing. The restaurant was packed, but Celine immediately spotted a dark-haired woman with a sour expression. "What does he even see in her?" she thought as she grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. "Selina, I'm so glad you came," exclaimed Rowena Wexley, casting a glance at Ilara. "How could I miss such an event?" Selina replied with a forced smile, kissing Margarita on the cheek. "You look stunning. Where's Callum?" Margarita asked, looking around. "Probably washing his hands," Selina replied, scanning the room for him. Ilara was also nowhere to be seen. "Well, enjoy yourself. I'll go greet the others," Margarita said, heading off. "They even have the audacity to sneak off here, in front of everyone." "Fine, let them," Celine thought. She turned to leave, but almost bumped into Ilara. "Hello, Mrs. Ashbourne," Ilara said, plastering a wide smile on her face. Her thick red lips looked like 2 fat caterpillars. "Hello, Ilara," Selina replied, smiling even wider, pretending to be overjoyed to see her. "You look lovely. Mr. Ashbourne is so lucky to have you." Ilara's voice dripped with mockery. "Thank you. You look great too, and your perfume is absolutely delightful." "Thank you," Celine said, holding back the urge to slap Ilara's heavily painted lips. "The appetizers are excellent tonight." At that moment, Callum approached, trying to act natural but clearly flustered. "Dear, isn't Ilara stunning tonight?" "Yes, she's enchanting," Selina replied, her voice heavy with sarcasm. Callum was visibly uncomfortable with her response. "Shall we dance?" Selene asked, grabbing his hand and dragging him to the dance floor. Ilara glared at them with hatred, biting her lip in frustration. Throughout the evening, Selene maintained the image of a happy wife. She danced, laughed, and kept a close eye on Callum. She wasn't trying to fool herself, just everyone else. She didn't want to be the subject of gossip about her husband's affair with a secretary right under her nose. By monopolizing his attention, she ensured no one else could doubt her composure or control. By the end of the evening, Evander joined Selene and Callum at their table. "Hello, folks. How's everything?" he asked cheerfully, slightly tipsy and clearly in a great mood. "Everything's wonderful. Care to join us for a drink?" Selena offered with a sly smile. "With pleasure. Unlike you, I came straight from work, and after our shifts, a drink is almost mandatory." Evander chuckled. "Another tough case?" Selene couldn't resist asking, even though work had followed them into this social setting. "They brought in a man who was strangled. No ID yet, so he's still ours for now," Evander replied, his professional instincts kicking in. "Even at a party, you two can't stop talking about bodies," Callum muttered, clearly irritated. "Do you always have to drag work into everything?" "And you, young man," Evander retorted with a smirk, "might find yourself in the same conversations one day." "Oh, please," Callum grumbled, getting up from the table. "I'm going to the restroom. You two can keep discussing your dead bodies." He walked away, leaving Selene and Evander alone. "Well, it seems we're just too out of place for polite society," Evander joked, pouring himself another drink. "We are polite society," Selene shot back with mock indignation, watching her husband's retreating figure. "I like your attitude," Evander said with a wink. "Too bad Aislinn couldn't make it. It feels like something's missing without her," Selena added, carefully watching his reaction. Evander blushed slightly and took a sip of his drink. "Yeah, definitely," he admitted. "Maybe you shouldn't overdo it with the alcohol," Selena suggested. "You've got a shift tomorrow, don't you?" "One great thing about our line of work. If we make mistakes, the patient won't complain," Evander quipped, bursting into laughter. "You're incorrigible," Selene laughed along, casually glancing at Ilara, who seemed to be scanning the room for someone. "Who are you looking at?" Evander asked, following her gaze. "Ilara," Selene said. "What do you know about her?" "Not much. I think she was married once but got divorced a few years ago. No kids," Evander replied. "Do you find her attractive?" Selene inquired, trying to sound casual. "Honestly? No. She always looks so unhappy. Her face is just unpleasant," Evander said after a moment of thought. "So it's not just me," Selene mused aloud. "No, it's pretty obvious," Evander said. Unlike most of their colleagues, he was unaware of the rumours about Callum and Ilara, so he didn't pick up on the subtext of Selene's questions. As the guests began to leave, Selene noticed Callum glaring at one of Margarita's relatives who was saying goodbye. "Darling, maybe it's time for us to go too," Selene asked sweetly, putting on her most saccharine tone. "Yeah, let's go," Callum replied, clearly not in the mood. "Thank you for inviting us," Selene said to the Wexleys while Callum called for a taxi. Margarita gave Selene a sympathetic look, fully aware of the tension. She regretted inviting Ilara but felt it would have been strange to exclude her since she was part of the office team. The taxi arrived, and Callum approached, trying to act normal. "Let's go," he said. "Goodbye, everyone." Selene waved with a forced cheerfulness as they left. In the taxi, they didn't exchange a single word. Callum was likely thinking about Ilara, who had left with someone else, while Selene saw no point in maintaining the pretense any longer. When they got home, Callum went straight to bed and Selene sat alone in the kitchen, contemplating her broken family and the injustices of life. Over the next 2 weeks, Selene didn't have the opportunity to proceed with her revenge plan. She read all of Callum's messages to Ilara, which only fueled her anger. Each new declaration of love from Callum to Ilara stung deeply. Finally, Selena decided to push him into the next phase of her plan herself. One morning, as they were getting ready for work, Selene casually brought it up. "I'll be on shift Saturday," she said. "You mentioned you have the day off, right?" Yeah, why? Callum asked. I thought maybe you could go to the cottage. The trees need spraying for pests, and there are a few other things to take care of, Celine suggested, her tone calm and nonchalant. I thought you wanted to go together. Callum seemed surprised. Not this time. No point in putting it off. And you know I'm busy with work, Celine replied smoothly, making sure not to raise any suspicion. All right, I'll go, Callum agreed, clearly anticipating another rendezvous with Alara. Perfect, Celine said, pleased that he had taken the bait. Callum then suggested, maybe come by the cottage after your shift. I won't. I'll be sleeping after work, Celine replied, knowing exactly why he made the suggestion. Fine, Callum said, attempting to sound casual, but Celine could see through him. Later, Callum added, I might visit my parents soon. They need some help around the house. Going alone? Celine asked. She had a great relationship with her in-laws, and they were always happy to see her. Just for a couple of days, you'll be working anyway, Callum said, clearly uncomfortable under her pointed questions. Celine smirked inwardly, enjoying his unease. All right then, she said, her tone light, but her mind already calculating the next steps. As Callum left the house in a hurry, Celine stared after him, thinking, soon, you'll realize who you've underestimated. In the evening, Celine met her friend Aislinn at a pizzeria they often visited after night shifts. Celine arrived much earlier, and while waiting, observed the patrons with curiosity. What a mix of people, she thought, noting a man leaning against the wall, chewing slowly. Is he drunk or just lost in thought? After finishing his bite, the man wiped his mouth with a napkin, swayed, and stood up. Definitely drunk, Celine decided, shifting her gaze to the next table. There, a young couple sat. The girl stirred her cocktail with a straw, smiling at the boy, who animatedly gestured as he told a story. Celine watched them, her thoughts drifting. Once she and Callum used to share such lively moments, bonding over mutual interests. Now their only shared interest was Alara. Callum wanted to make her as happy as possible, while Celine wanted to hurt her as much as possible. The couple stopped talking as the girl moved closer to the boy, their lips locking in a kiss. Celine's trance was interrupted when Aislinn approached. Startled, she flinched. Were you spying? Aislinn teased. Yes, and I envy them, Celine admitted gloomily. Don't envy them. Things will get better for you, Aislinn said reassuringly. You think so? I'm not so sure. What happened? Something new? Aislinn asked with concern. No, just the usual, Selina replied, brushing it off. I've been in a terrible mood lately. Forget about me. What's your news? Oh, right. I almost forgot. You can congratulate me. I'm getting divorced, Aislinn announced triumphantly. Congratulations. How did the conversation go? Much better than I expected. He offered to work things out, but without much enthusiasm. When I told him it wasn't worth it, he didn't push back, Aislinn explained. Then you made the right decision, Selene concluded. Seems so. And you? How's your revenge plan going? Did you install the app? Yes. I'm just waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Have you reconsidered? Maybe you should just leave Callum and his life behind. Why deal with unnecessary drama? Aislinn suggested. Oh, I'll disappear from his life, but not before I get my revenge. Otherwise, I won't feel closure. I know myself too well. Can you at least tell me what you're planning? Aislinn pressed. No, it's better if you don't know. Believe me, it's safer that way, Selene said with a sly smile. You're terrible at reassuring people, Aislinn sighed, growing even more anxious. Just forget about it for now. You'll find out soon enough, Selene promised. At that moment, the young couple paid their bill. The boy helped the girl into her coat and handed her her bag. She smiled, took his arm, and they left together. Maybe that'll be you and Evander soon, Selene said, nodding toward the departing couple. Oh, stop, we're way past that age, Aislinn said, waving the thought away. There's no age limit for that, Selene countered sensibly. Fair enough. I still can't believe I'm considering starting something new while you're dealing with all this, Aislinn admitted, feeling guilty. Don't be. You're not obligated to suffer in solidarity, Celine reassured her. Tomorrow my husband and I are filing for divorce. That's good news, isn't it? Why do you seem so down about it? Celine asked, noticing Aislinn's somber tone. No matter how you look at it, years of marriage are going down the drain. It's hard not to feel sad, Aislinn replied. I get it, but at least you're ending things with dignity. In my case, it's going to be fiery, Celine said with a bitter smile. You're scaring me. What exactly are you planning? Aislinn asked, determined to get an answer. You'll see in due time, Celine said, evading the question. After finishing their meal, they prepared to leave. Promise me you'll be careful, Aislinn said. I promise, Celine replied, heading to her car. She couldn't wait for the weekend. Her hatred for Callum and Alara grew stronger every day. The night before her revenge, Celine read Callum's messages to Alara. They mentioned plans for the cottage, confirming her suspicions. Everything was falling perfectly into place, as if the universe itself was helping her. Saturday morning, Celine went to the clinic to pick up some supplies for her upcoming performance at the cottage. The place was unusually quiet, which made her task easier. Even this worked out in my favour, she thought, searching for Vince, a morgue attendant known for his helpfulness. Finally, she saw him coming out of the elevator. Vince, can I talk to you? She called. Of course, Selena Sergeyevna, he replied, following her into a room. Close the door, Selena instructed, her voice steady but firm. What do you need? Vince asked, waiting for instructions. I have a very unusual request, and I'm willing to pay you well for it, Selene began, knowing Vince had financial troubles and wouldn't refuse a chance to earn extra money. I'm listening, Vince said, his eyes lighting up at the mention of payment. I need help loading a body into my car. Whose body? Vince asked, visibly shocked. I don't know. There's an unidentified body in the morgue. I need it for one night. Don't get the wrong idea. It's for revenge against my husband. Are you serious? Vince stammered. Yes, and I know this is illegal. But all you need to do is help me load the body. That's it. I promise no one will ever know you were involved. Maybe this isn't a good idea. Vince hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. I'm doing this with or without you. If you want to earn some money, let's get started. If not, forget we ever had this conversation, Celine said decisively. After a tense moment, Vince nodded reluctantly. All right, let's do it. Vince hesitated. He didn't want to miss the chance for some extra money. As a morgue attendant, his salary barely covered rent and basic necessities, with constant loans adding to his financial burdens. Despite the moral discomfort of helping Celine transport a corpse, he decided to agree. Vince had heard the clinic rumours about Callum's infidelity and guessed that Celine's revenge was for his betrayal. While he didn't know the details of her plan, sympathy and financial need outweighed his fear. I agree, he finally said. Excellent. Follow me, Celine instructed. 10 minutes later, Celine had her car backed up to the clinic's back entrance. Together, they loaded the body, wrapped in a large black garbage bag, into the trunk. Great job. Thanks, Celine said, handing Vince an envelope. Thank you, Vince said, relieved at the thickness of the envelope. Be careful out there. I will. Just remember, if anyone asks, you know nothing. What if they notice the body is missing? Vince asked nervously. They won't. The autopsy is complete and no one needs this body unless relatives show up, which won't happen overnight, Celine reassured him. Well, all right, Vince said, though his nerves remained unsettled. I'll need your help again when I bring it back, Celine added. I'll pay you extra for that. Of course. I'll help, Vince agreed, deciding he'd feel safer knowing the body was returned. Then wait for my call, Selene said, steering her car out of the clinic grounds. As she drove toward the cottage, she felt a wave of euphoria. Everything was going according to plan. Selene arrived at the countryside and parked outside a small grocery store. A local drunk, Rob, sat on a bench nearby. It was rare not to find him at his usual spot. Selene approached him. "Hello," she said, standing in front of Rob and trying to catch his bleary gaze. "Good day," he slurred, the stench of alcohol heavy in the air. "Want a bottle of whiskey?" Selene got straight to the point. "Wow, such generosity," Rob hiccuped. "Sure, why not? What's the catch?" "Nothing too hard, just need you to carry something into the house," Selene said. "No problem, Mom," Rob replied, eager for his reward. He stretched and stood, wobbling slightly. "Get in the car," Selene said coldly, gesturing to the back seat. She didn't want him too close. This time Selene parked in her usual spot near the cottage. Carrying the body through the alley was too risky. "Stay here, I'll be back," she instructed. "What about the whiskey?" Rob asked. "After the job's done," Selene snapped and headed to the house. Through the window, she spotted Callum rummaging through a cabinet, oblivious to her arrival. She grabbed her bag, pulled out a syringe, and filled it with a strong dose of sedative. Quietly, she climbed the steps and pushed open the slightly ajar door. Without giving Callum time to react, Selene charged in and injected the sedative into his leg. "What the hell are you doing?" Callum shouted, clutching his leg. "It's necessary," Selene replied calmly, stepping back. "What did you inject me with?" Callum asked in horror, his speech already slurring as the sedative took effect. "Just a sedative, don't worry," Selena said mockingly. "Your darling Alara will be here soon, but you'll be fast asleep. How unfortunate." "You'll pay for this," Callum began, but the drug took full effect, and he collapsed into a chair, his head lolling back. Selene walked out to the car where Rob was watching her closely. "He's worried I'll cheat him out of the whiskey," she thought in disgust. "Get out," Selene ordered. Rob stumbled out of the car, grinning as he clumsily bowed. "At your service, Ma'am." Selene opened the trunk, revealing the large black bag. "Take this into the house." "What's in there?" Rob asked, eyeing the bag suspiciously. "Don't ask questions. Just do it," Selene snapped. "This isn't—" "You know, a dead body?" Rob asked, his voice tinged with unease. "Stop talking. Do as I say and you'll get more than a bottle. You'll get a whole case," Selene promised, holding up a bottle of whiskey as a down payment. "Well, all right," Rob said, rolling up his sleeves. He grabbed the bag, immediately realizing what was inside. The corpse was heavier than he expected, and Selena silently cursed herself for not bringing a cart. Together they hauled the body into the house and laid it on the bed, covering it with a blanket. "How many dead folks you got here?" Rob asked, glancing nervously at the unconscious Callum. "He's alive, but he needs to be moved too," Selene said, ignoring his question. "You're one interesting lady," Rob muttered, his tone oddly respectful. "Someone like you should be treated like a queen, not doing this dirty work." "Don't count on it," Selene replied bitterly, helping him drag Callum out of the house and into the bushes where she had previously eavesdropped on him and Alara. Everything was going smoothly. The plan had gone off without a hitch so far. All that remained was the final act. Selene stepped out of the house and handed Rob his payment. "Thank you for your help. I'll be in touch if I need you again." "I'm always at your service," Rob replied with a crooked grin. "Seems like this poor guy's had quite the day. More travel than I ever get," he added with a coarse laugh. "Stay nearby. I'll call you when I need to load the body back into the car, and don't worry, you'll be compensated again." "Of course I wouldn't miss out on such a profitable deal," Rob said eagerly. "Goodbye for now," Selene said curtly as Rob wandered off, mumbling to himself about her peculiar behaviour. Selene went back inside, grabbed Callum's phone from the table and composed a message to Alara. "Power's out at the cottage. Bring a flashlight. I'm in the bedroom waiting for you. Feeling a little dizzy. Just come straight to bed." Suppressing her revulsion, Selene sent the message and quickly moved her car to a neighbouring street so Alara wouldn't see it, She returned to the house, turned off the power from the circuit breaker, and tightly drew the curtains. The growing darkness outside only added to the scene she was orchestrating. Soon, Ilara's reply arrived. "Sugar Plum, I'm on my way!" Selina felt a surge of anticipation. She lit a cigarette and hid in a niche in the bedroom wall, waiting silently. It wasn't long before she heard the sound of an approaching car. Ilara had arrived earlier than expected. Moments later, Celine heard the creak of the staircase. The beam of a flashlight danced through the hallway, growing closer. Her heart pounded as she peered through the crack in the door. Ilara entered the bedroom. "Darling, I'm here. Wake up already," Ilara cooed. She tossed her cardigan onto a chair, kicked off her shoes and slid under the blanket beside the body. "Sugar Plum, why are you so cold?" she murmured lovingly, snuggling closer. The next sound was a blood-curdling scream that surely echoed throughout the entire cottage settlement. Ilara bolted upright, clutching her chest as she stared in horror at the corpse's bluish, lifeless face illuminated by the flashlight she'd dropped on the bed. Her scream gave way to choking sobs, her body trembling uncontrollably. Celine emerged from the shadows, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "What's the matter, Ilara? Doesn't your sugar plum meet your expectations?" "You? You're a murderer," Ilara stammered, barely able to form words. "I didn't kill anyone," Celine retorted, rolling her eyes. "Maybe you should be more careful about whose bed you jump into." "Who is that?" Ilara cried, gasping for air. "No idea. Maybe you'll recognize him," Selene said coldly, throwing back the blanket to give Ilara a clearer view of the corpse. Ilara screamed again, then collapsed unconscious against the wall. "Such fragile nerves," Celine muttered, checking Ilara's pulse to ensure she was fine before leaving the room. Outside, Rob was seated on a log, finishing off a quarter of the whiskey bottle. Celine worried for a moment that he might be too drunk to help, but quickly realized he was still capable. "Back so soon? You work fast," Rob chuckled, offering her the bottle. "Care for a drink?" "No, thanks. Let's just get this over with," Celine said impatiently, gesturing for him to follow. "Lead the way," Rob replied, staggering slightly as he stood. Celine retrieved her car, and when she returned, Rob was leaning against the fence, taking another swig. "Maybe you should slow down. I'd hate for you to collapse mid-task," she said sharply. "Don't worry, I'm still standing strong," Rob reassured her, opening the gate for Celine to enter. Once inside the house, Rob scratched his head as he surveyed the scene. "Looks like your house is filling up with bodies." "She's just unconscious," Selina replied with disdain, nudging Ilara's limp form with her foot before checking her pulse one more time. "What happened here?" Rob asked, more curious than afraid. "Revenge for a cheating husband," Celine answered bluntly. "Well, that's one for the books," Rob said, unsure whether to be impressed or horrified. "Let's move the body, it's time for it to go back to the morgue," Celine said. Working together, they hauled the corpse back to Celine's car. Rob stayed behind, his curiosity and awe for Celine's boldness lingering as she drove away. Celine returned to the clinic late that night. She called Vince, who was on duty, and pulled her car up to the back entrance again. Together, they unloaded the corpse and returned it to the morgue without anyone noticing. "How did it go?" Vince asked nervously. "Perfectly. Better than I could have planned," Celine said, almost proudly. "Can I relax now? No one will find out about my involvement, right?" Vince asked, still on edge. "Relax. Just keep your mouth shut, and no one will ever know. Here's the rest of your payment," Celine said, handing him another envelope. Vince took it with a sigh of relief. "Thanks. You can count on me." "I know I can," Celine said with a confident smile before leaving. Vince eagerly stuffed the envelope into his pocket. "Thanks. Anything else?" he asked. "No, you can go," Celine replied curtly. She wanted to be alone. "I just wanted to ask, do we have a cover story, just in case someone starts poking around?" "Your story is simple. You know nothing. You saw nothing. Got it?" Celine said, her irritation growing. "Got it. But there are our fingerprints. They're all over the place," Vince added nervously. No one will bother checking, but if it makes you feel better, burn the bag somewhere remote, in the woods. Yeah, maybe I will, Vince agreed reluctantly. Suit yourself. Honestly, there's nothing suspicious about a pathologist's and a morgue attendant's fingerprints on a body, Celine said, trying to calm him down. You're right, Vince said, visibly relaxing. Good, now go, Celine said firmly. All right, have a good one, Vince replied, leaving the room. Celine glanced around her workplace for what she knew would be the last time. She had decided to quit the moment she formulated her revenge plan. Working in the same place as her cheating husband and his mistress was unbearable. She had already packed her belongings and moved them out discreetly to avoid running into anyone. However, her plan to avoid awkward encounters failed when Aislinn appeared from around the corner. Celine? I didn't expect to see you here, Aislinn said, approaching her friend. I still work here, remember? What about you? Why are you here so early? Celine asked. Had to pick up some autopsy results. I'm working on another gruesome case, Aislinn explained. You don't look so great. Are you feeling okay? Never better, just tired, Celine replied with a forced smile. Go home and rest. You're really pale, Aislinn said, studying Celine intently. I plan to. You're a great friend. Take care of yourself, Celine said, her tone unusually somber. You sound like you're saying goodbye, Aislinn said, alarmed. No, really, I'm fine. Just exhausted. See you later, Celine reassured her, walking away. Take care, Aislinn called after her. Celine drove home and began her final preparations to leave the city. The apartment belonged to Callum, so staying there wasn't an option. She packed the last of her things and loaded her car, knowing she couldn't take everything. The wind rustled outside as she paused to take one last look around the apartment. Meanwhile, Callum was regaining consciousness under the bushes outside the cottage. Dazed and disoriented, he struggled to stand, narrowly avoiding a branch that nearly poked him in the eye. The last thing he remembered was Celine rushing into the house. He staggered to his feet and stumbled toward the house, using the wall for support. When he reached the door, he found it unlocked. Feeling along the wall for the light switch, Callum realized the power was out. He made his way to the circuit breaker in the basement and managed to restore the electricity. As light flooded the house, strange noises from the bedroom caught his attention. Moving cautiously, he opened the bedroom door and was met with an unsettling sight. Ilara sat huddled in the corner, her face buried in her hands, her body shaking uncontrollably. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Callum asked, rushing toward her, though his legs felt weak and unsteady. Ilara raised her head, revealing a face swollen from crying, with makeup smeared across it like a mask. "What happened here? Where's Celine?" "I remember she was here," Callum said, his voice filled with confusion. "Celine." Ilara's face went pale, her lips trembling as she tried to form words. "Wait here." "I'll get you some water," Callum said, stumbling toward the kitchen. When he returned, Ilara took the glass with trembling hands, trying to steady her breathing. "It's okay. Everything's going to be fine," Callum said, stroking her head gently. "Your wife? She—" Ilara began to sob again, unable to finish her sentence. "You saw her too? I thought I was dreaming. I don't remember anything after she came into the house," Callum admitted. "I saw her, and someone else," Ilara said between sobs. "Someone else? Who?" Callum asked, still struggling to piece things together. "A corpse," Ilara choked out, shuddering as she recalled the image. "She put a dead body in the bed." "A corpse? Are you sure?" Callum asked, horrified. "Positive. Look at the message she sent me from your phone," Ilara cried, showing Callum the text. Callum read the message, trying to make sense of it all. Why would she do this? "Because she's insane," Ilara screamed, clutching at him desperately. "Calm down. It's over now," Callum said, trying to soothe her. He led her toward the bed, but Ilara screamed again, refusing to go near it. "There's no one there now," Callum said, lifting the blanket to show her the empty bed. "She must have taken it away." "But it was there," Ilara insisted, her voice trembling. "Let's get out of here. You need to calm down," Callum said, wrapping an arm around her waist and leading her out of the room. "I can't stay here. I want to leave," Ilara sobbed. "We will. Let me get myself together first," Callum said, sitting her down in the living room. "Celine must have drugged me. That's why I don't remember anything," he realized aloud. "She's a monster," Ilara cried. "Have a drink. It'll help," Callum said, pouring her a small glass of whiskey. "I don't drink," Ilara whispered. "Now's the time to start." "You've been through a lot," Callum said, sitting beside her and wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Ilara took a deep breath and downed her drink in one gulp, her cheeks instantly flushing. "I feel better now. I'm going to get the car. I can't stay here another second," she said, jumping to her feet and grabbing Callum's hand. "Of course I'll come with you," Callum replied, deeply worried about her state. 15 minutes later, they were speeding down the highway, trying to leave the horrors of the night behind. Callum was furious with Celine. He couldn't comprehend how she had pulled off such a stunt. She must have taken the body from work, but how? How had she smuggled it out of the morgue, transported it to the cottage, and then returned it? Maybe she's been caught by now, he thought, gripping the steering wheel tightly. He didn't want to discuss the events with Ilara. She clearly wasn't ready for such a conversation. At the hotel, they were quickly checked in. Ilara collapsed onto the bed and fell into a dreamless sleep, the stress of the night knocking her out completely. Callum, however, couldn't sleep. His anger towards Celine simmered, keeping him awake as he replayed the events in his mind over and over. In the morning, Ilara woke up in a subdued mood, unable to shake off the previous night's trauma. Callum drove her to her mother's house, promising her she could take all the time she needed to recover. Then, determined to confront Selene, he headed to the clinic. Bursting into Celine's office, Callum was ready to unleash his fury, but he found only her replacement, Evander. "Hey, Evander, where's Celine?" Callum demanded, standing in the doorway. Evander looked up, surprised by Callum's tone. "She quit. You didn't know?" "Quit? What do you mean, quit?" Callum asked, stunned. "She handed in her resignation and left. Just like that. What's going on? Did you two fight?" Evander asked, genuinely concerned. "We broke up," Callum muttered, his resolve crumbling. "You want to talk about it?" Evander offered. "No, not now," Callum said, walking out. "All right, take care," Evander called after him. Convinced Selene must be at home, Callum drove there next. He stormed into the apartment, calling her name. "Selena." The silence was deafening. He checked the bedroom and found the wardrobe wide open, completely empty. Searching the apartment, he realized she had taken all her belongings. In the kitchen, he noticed her wedding ring on the table. He picked it up, turned it over in his hand, and then, in a fit of rage, threw it out the window. The act gave him fleeting relief, but soon despair settled in. He sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the emptiness left behind. Months passed. Callum had moved into a bachelor's apartment devoid of warmth or personality. One evening, he lay on his couch staring at his phone, waiting for a message from Ilara that never came. How much longer is she going to need? He thought bitterly, lighting a cigarette. Ilara had been deeply traumatized by Selene's scheme. Unable to cope, she sought therapy and asked Callum for time to recover. She promised to contact him when she was ready, but as the days turned into weeks and then months, Callum realized she likely wouldn't return. "She's not coming back," he admitted to himself, exhaling smoke. Now he was truly alone, unsure of how to move forward. Meanwhile, Selena had started a new life in a northern city, far from her old one. She had left pathology behind and found work as a forensic fingerprint expert. Her new colleagues were intrigued by the stately, attractive woman in their midst, but Celine wasn't interested in relationships. The pain from her past was still too fresh, though she felt at peace knowing she had left it all behind. She occasionally kept in touch with Aislinn, who had shared updates on the aftermath. Ilara had left her job in law enforcement and found work in a quieter field. Selene's dramatic revenge story hadn't caused a scandal. Management had dismissed Ilara's complaints as exaggerated since no harm had come to anyone, and all the morgue's records were intact. Callum, however, remained at the clinic but had withdrawn from everyone, lost in his own world. Aislinn, now on maternity leave, was expecting a baby girl with Evander in March. Celine was genuinely happy for them, grateful to have two people she could still trust. Her past was finally behind her, and she was ready to embrace her new life, even if it meant taking things one careful step at a time.